My parents finally threw me a birthday party after years of acting like I did not exist. Everyone was smiling, everyone was filming. Then the cake came out. The frosting was not a happy birthday wish. It was a confession with my name on it. I did not cry or yell. I just said 3 words that made the whole table go silent. They thought they were recording my breakdown, but they were actually recording their own downfall. I am Stella Perry, and I have spent 31 years trying to decode the language of my own family. For 3 decades, I thought the dialect was just cruelty, or perhaps a specific brand of Midwestern passive aggression that flourishes in the gray winters of Cleveland, Ohio. I was wrong. The language was transaction. They were not speaking love. They were speaking leverage. And tonight, inside this mediocre Italian chain restaurant with its faux Tuscan plaster walls and smell of burnt garlic, I finally decided to stop listening and start rewriting the dictionary. The invitation itself had been a red flag. My mother, Diane, does not do surprises. She does orchestrations. When she texted me to meet at 7 o'clock at Giovanni's table, she used 3 exclamation points. Diane Perry believes that punctuation is a substitute for affection. If she uses enough exclamation points, surely she loves you. I parked my 10-year-old sedan between 2 pristine SUVs in the parking lot, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, and saw a woman who looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind of tired that comes from holding up a shield for too long. I took a breath, the cold March air biting at my lungs, and walked inside. The moment I crossed the threshold into the private dining room they had rented, the lights did not dim, and no one jumped out to scream surprise. Instead, they were already waiting. Seated in a U-shape like a tribunal, the atmosphere was terrifyingly perfect. It was the kind of scene you see in a commercial for life insurance or a medication with a long list of side effects. My father, Curtis, was at the head of the table, wearing his church suit. My mother was next to him, her hair sprayed into a helmet of blonde armor. And then there were my siblings, Bryn and Cole, the twin sons around which the Perry universe revolved. "There she is, the birthday girl!" My mother shrieked. Her voice was an octave too high. It was a performance voice. Before I could even take off my coat, I noticed the technology. That was the second red flag. Everyone had their phones out, not just on the table, but raised. Lenses pointed at the empty chair that was clearly designated for me. My cousin Tessa was there, holding her phone with both hands, looking slightly apologetic, but filming nonetheless. My Aunt Marianne was recording. Even my father had his phone propped up against a glass of iced tea, the red recording dot pulsing like a warning light. I forced a smile. It is a muscle memory I developed when I was 5 years old. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. You guys didn't have to do this." "Nonsense," Dad boomed. He stood up, but he did not come over to hug me. He gestured to the seat. "Sit, sit. We have big news. Big celebrations tonight." I sat. The leather of the booth was cold. Immediately, the camera lenses shifted, tracking me as I settled in. I felt like an animal in a zoo enclosure, waiting for the keepers to throw the meat so the tourists could get a good reaction shot. "So," Bryn started, leaning across the table. She didn't say happy birthday. She just thrust her left hand into my face. The diamond on her ring finger was obscene. It was not just big. It was aggressive. It caught the overhead track lighting and sent a fracture of light right into my eyes. "Finally official. Todd proposed last night. Can you believe the size of this thing? It is 3 carats. Stella, 3? It's beautiful." "Bryn," I said, my voice steady. "Where did Todd get the money for that?" Todd was a part-time personal trainer who spent most of his income on protein supplements. Bryn kicked me under the table, a sharp connect of shin against shin. "He has his ways," Bryn said, retracting her hand and winking at the camera my mother was holding. "We are going to have the wedding in Cabo. Next November. You are going to be a bridesmaid. Obviously, but you have to pay for your own ticket." "And check this out," Cole interrupted. He didn't care about Bryn's ring. He tossed a key fob onto the tablecloth. It landed with a heavy, expensive thud. The logo on the fob was German, a luxury brand. Picked it up this morning. Black interior. Heated steering wheel. The works. I figured. I got the promotion. I deserve the ride. Right. What promotion, I asked. Last I heard, Cole was between jobs. Finding himself while living in our parents' finished basement. Consulting, Cole said vaguely, sharing a look with Dad. I am doing some independent consulting now. Cash flow is good, really good. I looked at my parents. They were beaming. They were glowing with pride. Usually, when Cole spent money he didn't have, Dad would be purple with rage. Usually, when Bryn demanded a destination wedding, Mom would be complaining about the cost of flights. But tonight, they looked like they had won the lottery. They looked relieved. We are just so proud of all our children, Mom said, addressing her phone screen rather than looking at me. We are a family that helps each other. That is what Perrys do. We lift each other up. She turned the camera to face me. Right, Stella. We help each other. The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded. The waiter approached. Sensing the tension but unable to avoid his duty, he cleared his throat. Are we ready for the celebration? The waiter asked. He looked nervous. He was holding a large platter covered by a silver dome. Yes. Dad clapped his hands. Bring it out. Lights. Someone flicked the dimmer switch near the door, lowering the lights. The glow of the smartphone screens became the primary source of illumination. 10 different flashes went off as the waiter lowered the tray onto the table in front of me. Happy birthday, Stella, the family chorused. It was not a song. It was a chant. The waiter lifted the silver dome. I stared at the cake. It was a quarter-sheet cake, standard grocery store bakery issue, with white buttercream frosting and yellow piped borders. But it was the image on top that made the air leave the room. It wasn't a picture of me. It wasn't a flower. It was an edible photo print, a high-resolution scan of a document. I leaned in, my heart hammering against my ribs. Though my face remained frozen, I recognized the document. It was a loan application, a massive one. And at the bottom of the edible page, in black icing that mimicked ink, was a signature. Stella Perry. Above the document, written in cheerful red gel script, were the words, Happy Birthday, our favorite co-signer. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. I thought the stress of my job at Lakeview Meridian Solutions had finally cracked my brain. But then I heard the laughter. It started with Cole, a low, arrogant chuckle. Then Bryn joined in, a high-pitched giggle. Then my parents. They were laughing. They were filming my face, zooming in, waiting for the shock, the confusion, the tears. They expected me to look at that cake and see a prank. Or worse, they expected me to see it and accept it. They thought this was a cute way to tell me they had used my name. Again, they thought they were recording a funny family moment where Stella, the doormat, realizes she has bought her brother a car and her sister a wedding, and she just shrugs and eats the cake because she is so desperate for them to love her. I looked at the edible signature. It was a good forgery, but it was a forgery. The loop on the P was too wide. I had not signed that. I had not signed anything. The waiter backed away, terrified. The room was filled with the sound of my family laughing and the soft clicks of shutters. Surprise, Mom squealed. We knew you would want to help. We figured, since your credit is so good and you are doing so well, why bother you with the paperwork? Cole needed the car for his image. And Bryn, well, you know how she is. We are a team. Stella. And you are the MVP. Eat a piece, Stella, Cole goaded, zooming his phone in on the cake. Have a slice of debt. It is delicious. It is just a cosign. Honey, Dad added, his voice dropping to that reasonable, manipulative tone he used when he wanted to borrow money he would never pay back. It barely affects you. Just helps them get the rates they deserve. We kept it a secret to surprise you for your birthday. The best gift is giving. Right. I sat there. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. The laughter began to falter. They weren't getting the reaction they wanted. They wanted me to cry so they could comfort me and tell me I was a good sister. They wanted me to scream so they could edit the video to make me look crazy and ungrateful. I did neither. My training as a risk control specialist took over. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was an auditor looking at a crime scene. I looked at the cake. I looked at the signature. I looked at the phone cameras. I slowly raised my eyes to meet my mother's gaze. The smile on her face wavered. The edges of her mouth twitched. She lowered her phone slightly. "Stella?" she asked. "Why aren't you smiling? It is a joke." "Well, it is real, but the cake is a joke." I turned my head to the right, looking directly into my father's camera lens. I wanted to make sure the microphone caught every syllable. I wanted to make sure the cloud storage saved this moment forever. I took a breath. My voice was not loud. It was deadly quiet. It cut through the room like a scalpel. "Fraud report filed." The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy and suffocating. My father blinked. "What?" I said. I repeated, enunciating every letter. "Fraud, report, filed." I saw the realization hit Cole first. The keys to the German car on the table suddenly looked like stolen goods. His smirk vanished. "What are you talking about?" Cole snapped, his voice cracking. "I received alerts on my credit monitoring yesterday." I lied. I hadn't received them yesterday. I had found them a week ago, but the timeline didn't matter to them. Multiple hard inquiries, new accounts opened. I didn't know who did it, so I did what any responsible person does. I filed a police report for identity theft. I filed affidavits with the Federal Trade Commission, and I placed an extended fraud alert on my Social Security number. I pointed at the cake. "I thought it was strangers," I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. "But thank you for the cake, and thank you for the confession. You just saved the investigators a lot of time." I stood up. The reaction was instantaneous and violent. "Stop," Mom screamed. It wasn't a request. It was a shriek of pure panic. She dropped her phone. It clattered onto the bread plate. "Stella, stop it. You did not do that." "You little witch," Dad roared. He lunged across the table, his hand grasping for my phone, but I had already slipped it into my coat pocket. "You undo it right now. You call them and tell them it was a mistake." "It wasn't a mistake," I said calmly. "It is a felony." Bryn scrambled up from the booth, her face twisted in horror. "My wedding, Stella. You are going to ruin my credit. They will cancel the venue." She reached for my purse, her manicured claws hooking onto the strap. "Give me your phone. Fix this." I yanked the purse back with a force that surprised even me. Bryn stumbled back, knocking over a glass of red wine. The dark liquid splashed across the white tablecloth, looking disturbingly like blood. It soaked into the bottom of the happy birthday cake. "Don't touch me," I said. The restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners were looking. The waiter was whispering frantically to a manager near the kitchen doors. My family was standing amidst the wreckage of their own arrogance. Mom was crying now. But they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of a manipulator whose strings had been cut. Dad was purple, looking like he was about to have a stroke. Cole was frantically typing on his phone, presumably trying to check if his new car was about to be repossessed. I looked at them one last time. I looked at the cake, soggy with wine, the edible contract dissolving into a red and white mess. "I hope the car was worth it." "Cole," I said. "And Bryn, good luck with the wedding. I hear the courthouse is cheap." I turned my back on them. "Stella," Mom wailed, her voice echoing off the plaster walls. "We are your family. How can you do this to us?" I didn't look back. I walked past the stunned hostess stand. I walked out the heavy double doors. "Thanks for dinner," I said to the air. Though no one could hear me, I stepped out into the parking lot. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally letting the axe fall. Behind me, inside the restaurant, I could hear the muffled sounds of shouting. I heard my father's voice booming, blaming someone, blaming me. I walked to my car, unlocked the door, and got in. I sat there for a moment in the silence of the driver's seat. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was 7:21. The whole party had lasted less than 25 minutes. I pulled my phone out. I stopped the recording I had started the moment I walked in. I saved the file. Then I opened my email app. I had a draft folder ready. It contained copies of the credit freeze confirmation, the police report number, and a pre-written message to my Uncle Bob, who was the only person in the family with a moral compass and, more importantly, a law degree. I attached the audio file I had just recorded. I hesitated for a fraction of a second. I thought about the years of being told I was too sensitive, the years of being told that paying for their mistakes was my duty. I thought about the cake, our favorite cosigner. I hit send. Then I put the car in reverse and backed out of the spot. I didn't speed. I didn't peel out. I drove the speed limit, 35 miles per hour, all the way home. My birthday was over. But the real party was just getting started. The silence in my car on the drive home was not empty. It was crowded with ghosts. It was filled with the echoes of 3 decades of conditioning. The kind of psychological wiring that takes a lifetime to install and, if you are lucky, only half a lifetime to rip out. As I watched the highway markers flash by, white stripes in the darkness, I realized that tonight was not an explosion. It was an erosion. It was the final crumbling of a cliff that the waves had been battering against since I was a child. In the Perry household, love was not a birthright. It was a currency, and like any economy, there were winners and there were losers. Cole was the gold standard. He was the firstborn son, the high school quarterback, the one whose mediocrity was always reframed as potential. When Cole got a DUI in college, my parents did not call it a crime. They called it a youthful indiscretion. They hired the best lawyer, paid the fines, and bought him a newer, safer car to celebrate his fresh start. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong because his reflection was the only one my father liked to look at. Bryn was the princess. She was the currency of vanity. If Cole was the heir, Bryn was the show pony. Her value lay in her ability to attract attention. She was loud, dramatic, and demanding. Traits my mother called passion. When Bryn maxed out her first 3 credit cards buying designer handbags she could not afford, my parents did not teach her about interest rates. They consolidated her debt and told her she just had expensive taste, as if financial illiteracy was a charming quirk of her personality. And then there was me, Stella, the error. I was not athletic like Cole. I was not flashy like Bryn. I was quiet, observant, and tragically ordinary. In a house that valued the loud and the shiny, I was the gray wallpaper. I was the child who did her homework without being asked, who never got detention, and who never asked for money. You would think this would make me the easy child, the one they appreciated for being low maintenance. Instead, it made me the target. My existence seemed to irritate them. It was as if my stability was a judgment on their chaos. The phrase I heard most often growing up was, "We are just trying to help you." It is the most dangerous sentence in the English language because it dresses cruelty in the costume of benevolence. They would say it when my mother went through my closet and threw away the clothes she deemed frumpy, replacing them with things that looked like Bryn's cast-offs. "We are just trying to help you look more approachable." Stella. They said it when I chose to go to a state university on a scholarship instead of the expensive private school Bryn barely graduated from. "We are just trying to help you aim higher." Stella. You settle for so little. They said it when I took a job at Lakeview Meridian Solutions right out of college. My father had sneered at the title. Risk Control Specialist. It sounded boring to him. It lacked the flash of Cole's imaginary entrepreneurial ventures or Bryn's vague career in fashion marketing. But I loved it. I loved the precision of it. At Lakeview Meridian, there were rules. There were columns and rows. If the numbers did not add up, you found the error. You fixed it, and the world made sense again. I was good at it. I was promoted 3 times in 5 years. I made a comfortable 6-figure salary. I owned my own condo in a quiet, appreciating neighborhood. I drove a car that was paid off. I had an emergency fund that could cover 6 months of living expenses to my family. However, I was a failure. They viewed my prudence as stinginess. They viewed my privacy as secrecy. They did not care about my career because they could not brag about it at the country club. You cannot toast to risk management. It is not sexy. But they cared about my credit score. I did not realize how much they cared until about 5 years ago. That was when the dynamic shifted. I stopped being the disappointment and started being the resource. It was subtle at first. It was not a request for money. It was a request for credibility. Mom would call me, her voice dripping with that sugary fake warmth I learned to despise. She would need me to look over a contract for them. Or Dad would ask me to put a utility bill in my name because they were switching providers, and it was just easier since I was tech savvy. I did it. I always did it. I was starved for their approval. I thought that if I could be useful, maybe I could be loved. I thought that if I signed the paper, they would finally look at me the way they looked at Cole. I was buying tickets to a show that was never going to happen. I learned to survive by becoming a cataloger of behaviors. When you are the scapegoat, you develop a sixth sense for the atmosphere in a room. You learn to read the tightness in your mother's jaw that precedes a critique. You learn to identify the specific pitch of your father's laugh that means he is lying to a neighbor. I became a human lie detector long before I made it my profession. I noticed that they never asked about my day. They never asked about my friends or my dating life unless they could make a joke about it. They only called when they had a problem that required a signature or a transfer. The cracks in my denial started to form exactly 14 months ago. I was sitting at my desk at Lakeview, running a routine background check on a corporate client, when I decided to pull my own credit report. It is a habit in my industry. We preach vigilance, so we practice it. I opened the file and scrolled down. Everything looked normal until I reached the hard inquiries section. There was a pull from a leasing company I did not recognize. It was dated 3 weeks prior. I stared at the screen. I had not applied for an apartment. I had not co-signed for a car. I called my father that night. I tried to keep my voice casual. I asked him if any mail had come to their house for me, maybe something triggered by a pre-approved offer. Dad laughed. It was a nervous, wet sound. He told me I was being paranoid. He said, "You probably clicked on one of those internet ads. Stella, you know how they track you. It is just a glitch. Don't worry about it. We are just trying to help you not stress over nothing." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. The alternative was to believe that my father, the man who led Grace at Thanksgiving, had tried to use my social security number to lease something behind my back, so I let it go. I told myself it was a glitch. I gaslit myself because the truth was too cold to hold on to, but the risk controller in me could not sleep. The professional part of my brain, the part that spotted embezzlement schemes and insurance fraud for a living, kept waking me up at 3 a.m. I started observing them with a new lens. I went to Sunday dinners not as a daughter, but as an investigator. I watched Cole drive up in a rental car one week, claiming his truck was in the shop. I noticed Bryn hiding shopping bags in the trunk of her car before coming inside. I listened to my mother complain about how unfair the banks were, how they did not understand that Dad's business was cyclic. They were drowning. I could smell the desperation on them like cheap cologne. They were living a lifestyle they had not been able to afford since the mid-90s, fueled by debt and delusion, and I was the only one in the family with a life raft. I started to lock things down. Quietly, I changed the passwords on my bank accounts. I stopped leaving my purse unattended when I visited their house. I opted out of paper statements so nothing would accidentally arrive at their address, but I did not freeze my credit. Not yet. Why? Because freezing my credit felt like an act of war. It felt like an accusation. If I froze my credit, I was admitting that my enemy was inside the house. I was admitting that the people who were supposed to protect me were the ones I needed protection from. I was not ready to sever the cord. I was still holding on to that pathetic, childish hope that maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just the cynical, ungrateful daughter they always said I was. Then came the invitation to the birthday party. The moment Mom called, I knew something was wrong. Her voice was too bright. She used the word family 4 times in 2 minutes. She said, "We just want to celebrate you. Stella, you deserve it. I do not deserve it in their eyes. I never have." When I hung up the phone, I sat in my living room and looked at the walls I had paid for. I looked at the life I had built from scratch, without their help, without their golden handouts, and I realized that they did not want to celebrate me. They wanted to harvest me. I logged into the credit bureaus that night. I saw the new activity. It was not just an inquiry this time. It was a pending application. The grief hit me first. It was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that doubled me over on my sofa. I cried for the little girl who just wanted her dad to be proud of her report card. I cried for the teenager who wore the ugly clothes so her mom wouldn't yell. I cried for the woman who had spent 31 years trying to buy love with obedience. But when the tears stopped, the ice set in. I stopped being Stella the daughter. I became Stella the risk control specialist. I did not call them to scream. I did not text them to ask why. I understood, with crystal clarity, that asking them for the truth was useless. They did not speak truth. They spoke manipulation. If I confronted them privately, they would deny it. They would spin it. They would tell me I was crazy. They would say, "We were just trying to help you build your credit history." Stella, you should thank us. I needed more than a confrontation. I needed evidence, and I needed witnesses. I prepared for that party like I was preparing for a court case. I reviewed my financials. I documented the timeline. I practiced my breathing. I knew that walking into that restaurant would be walking into a trap, but it was a trap I had to spring if I wanted to be free. I realized that I did not want their love anymore. You cannot want love from a parasite. You can only want removal. As I turned my car onto my street, the familiar sight of my condo building rising against the night sky gave me a small comfort. It was mine. The bricks, the mortar, the mortgage, it was all mine. I parked the car and turned off the engine. The silence returned, but it felt different now. It didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. I thought about the look on my mother's face when I said the words, "fraud report filed." It was the first time in my life I had seen her look at me with genuine respect. It was the respect of a predator realizing that the prey has teeth. I walked up the path to my front door, my heels clicking on the pavement. I was exhausted, drained to my very marrow, but my mind was sharp. I knew this was just the beginning. They would not go down quietly. Cole would come for me. Bryn would play the victim. My parents would unleash the full force of their guilt-tripping arsenal. Let them come. I unlocked my door and stepped into the sanctuary of my home. I locked the deadbolt behind me. Then I engaged the second lock and the chain. I went to my home office and turned on my computer. The screen glowed to life, illuminating the room in a cool blue light. I opened a new folder on my desktop. I named it simply Evidence. I was done being the daughter they were ashamed of. I was about to become the woman they feared. The flashback was over. The reality was here, and in this reality, I was not the co-signer, I was the plaintiff. 7 days before the incident at Giovanni's table. My phone rang at 7:30 in the evening. The caller ID flashed Mom. In the Perry family ecosystem, a call from Diane Perry at night usually meant one of two things. Either someone had died, or she needed a favor that required immediate moral flexibility on my part. I let it ring twice. I was washing dishes, scrubbing a ceramic plate with more force than necessary, debating whether to answer. I dried my hands on a towel and picked up the phone. "Hello?" I said. "Stella, sweetie." My mother's voice was dipped in honey, but I could hear the vinegar underneath. It was too bright, too melodic. It was the voice she used when she was trying to charm a returned desk clerk into taking back a dress she had already worn. "Hi, Mom," I said, leaning against my granite countertop. "What's wrong?" "Nothing is wrong." She laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. Why does something have to be wrong for a mother to call her daughter? "I am just calling about your birthday next week. Tuesday, right?" "Yes," I said. "Tuesday. Well, we want to do something special," she said. "We want to take you to dinner, Saturday night, just the family, Giovanni's table. We booked a private room." My stomach tightened. My parents did not do private rooms. Private rooms cost extra. My parents did not do special for me unless there was an audience or an agenda. "Mom, you don't have to do that," I said. "I am fine with just ordering takeout." No, we insist," she pressed. "Everyone is coming. Cole is driving in. Bryn and Todd are coming. Aunt Marianne might even stop by. We need you there. Stella, it is important that we are all together, for the memories." Memories, I asked. Just be there, Stella. My father's voice suddenly cut in. He must have been listening on speakerphone. His tone was not sweet. It was low and edged with a warning. Don't be difficult, and for God's sake, dress nice. Don't embarrass us. Don't embarrass us. That was the tell. That phrase was the skeleton key to my father's psyche. He had said it to me before my high school graduation, right before he made me take out a student loan I didn't need, so he could use my tuition money for a bad investment. He had said it before my cousin's wedding, right before they asked me to drive Cole home because he was too drunk to stand. Don't embarrass us, translated to, we are about to do something shady, and we need you to play the prop. Okay, I said, keeping my voice flat. I will be there. 7 o'clock, Mom chirped, the sweetness returning instantly now that compliance was secured. Love you. The line went dead. I stood there in my kitchen, the silence of my apartment wrapping around me. I did not feel loved. I felt hunted. I went straight to my laptop. I had checked my credit report casually the year before, but this time, I was going to perform a forensic autopsy. I logged into the monitoring service. I paid $20 a month for a service I had purchased specifically because I did not trust the people who shared my DNA. I bypassed the credit score summary. I went straight to the hard inquiries and new accounts tab. My breath hitched. There it was, dated 3 days ago, a hard inquiry from Liberty Automotive Finance. I scrolled down. Another one, dated 5 days ago, a hard inquiry from First National Bank of Ohio. I scrolled further. A pending application status for a personal loan in the amount of $25,000. My hands started to shake. Not the trembling of a victim, but the vibrating tension of a bomb technician seeing the red wire connected to the timer. They weren't just asking for money this time, they were taking it. I looked at the automotive inquiry. Cole had been talking about a new car for months. He wanted a luxury German sedan. Those cars cost upwards of $60,000. With Cole's credit score, which I assumed was in the low 500s, he would be lucky to get approved for a bus pass, unless he had a co-signer with an 800 credit score. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. They had used my name, they had forged my signature, and the dinner, the private room. That wasn't a party, that was the cover-up. That was the scene of the crime where they would guilt me into accepting it, or perhaps trick me into signing a document they would claim was a birthday card or a release form. I needed to know exactly how far they had gone. I picked up my phone and dialed the customer service number for the bank listed on the personal loan application. It was 8:15 in the evening. I prayed their call center was still open. A robotic voice greeted me. I navigated the menu, punching in my social security number. The system recognized me. That was bad. It meant the profile existed. Please hold for a representative, the voice said. I waited for 12 minutes. When a human finally picked up, her name was Sarah. She sounded exhausted. This is Sarah. How can I help you today? Hi, Sarah, I said, putting on my professional voice. I am calling to check the status of an application. My name is Stella Perry. One moment. Ms. Perry, let me pull that up. I heard the clicking of a keyboard. Okay. I see here we have a joint application for a quick cash personal loan, $25,000. It is currently in the final underwriting stage. Joint application, I asked. Who is the primary applicant? That would be a Curtis Perry, she said. My father. And I am listed as the co-signer, I asked. Yes, ma'am. We have your electronic signature on file from the submission on the 14th. We are just waiting on one final income verification document to release the funds. It looks like it is flagged as pending upload. I see, I said. My blood was boiling, but I forced it to cool. If I screamed fraud now, the bank would shut it down immediately. That sounded like the right move, but it wasn't. If I shut it down over the phone tonight, my parents would just claim it was a mistake. They would say they clicked the wrong button. They would gaslight me. They would say I was overreacting, and they would try again next week at a different bank. I needed them to hang themselves. I needed them to think they had gotten away with it. Is there anything else I need to do right now? I asked Sarah. No, Ms. Perry. Once that document is uploaded, the funds should be dispersed within 48 hours. Thank you, Sarah. You have been very helpful. I hung up. So, that was the timeline. The party was Saturday. The funds were set to release shortly after. They probably needed me to hand over a pay stub or a tax return at the dinner, or maybe they had already forged that too. And the dinner was just a victory lap. I needed technical advice. I texted David, a guy from the IT security department at my firm. David was paranoid, brilliant, and owed me a favor for catching a vendor error that would have cost his department $10,000 from their budget last quarter. Stella. Hey David, hypothetical question. If someone wanted to record a conversation in Ohio to prove fraud, is that legal? And how do I lock down my digital life so tight that even God needs a password? David replied in 30 seconds. David, Ohio is a one-party consent state. As long as you are part of the conversation, you can record it without telling them. Legal and admissible. As for the lockdown, are we talking ex-boyfriend or state-sponsored hackers Stella family? David, the worst kind of hackers. Because they know your mother's maiden name and the street you grew up on. Give me 10 minutes. I will send you a protocol. 20 minutes later, I had a PDF from David titled The Fortress. I spent the next 3 hours following his instructions. I enabled two-factor authentication on every single account I owned, using an authenticator app rather than SMS text messages, because David warned me that SIM swapping was easy for people who knew your personal details. I changed every password to a randomized string of 20 characters. Then, I went to the credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. I stared at the freeze credit button on my screen. This was the nuclear option. Once I did this, no one could open a new account in my name, not even me. Unless I went through a rigorous unlocking process, if I froze it now, the bank might reject the loan before Saturday. My parents would know something was up. I hesitated. I needed to time this perfectly. I decided to place a temporary freeze that would take effect in 24 hours, but I also added a fraud alert. This didn't block credit, but it required lenders to take extra steps to verify identity. Then, I built the trap. I sat at my computer and drafted an email. The recipient list included my Uncle Bob, who was a ruthless contract lawyer in Chicago and had never liked my father. It also included my cousin Tessa, who was young and gossipy but had a good heart, and just for insurance, I added the general fraud tip line for the State Attorney General's office. Subject Identity Theft and Financial Fraud by Diane and Curtis Perry. I attached the PDF of the credit report showing the inquiries. I attached the screenshot of the pending loan application I had managed to grab from the bank's portal before changing the password. I wrote a brief, clinical explanation of what was happening. To the family, if you are reading this, it means I have confirmed that my parents and siblings have used my identity to secure loans without my consent. Attached is the evidence. I have already filed a police report. I am sharing this so there is no ambiguity about why I will no longer be in contact with them. I did not send it. I saved it as a draft. I downloaded an app on my phone that allowed me to schedule emails. I set the email to send on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. If the party turned out to be a misunderstanding, which I knew it wouldn't, I could cancel it. If I was right, the email would go out while they were nursing their hangovers. But that wasn't enough. I needed something more immediate. I needed a dead man's switch. I created a shortcut on my phone's home screen. One tap, and it would send a pre-written text to Uncle Bob with the audio file of whatever I was recording. By Friday night, the day before the party, I was a ghost in my own life. I went to work. I did my job. But my mind was entirely focused on the operation. I felt a strange detachment. The hurt was there, buried deep under layers of cold resolve, but I couldn't access it. I couldn't afford to feel sad about the fact that my brother saw me as a wallet and my mother saw me as a cosigner. If I started crying, I would lose, and I was done losing. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror Friday night. I looked at the dark circles under my eyes. "Why are you going?" I asked my reflection. It was a valid question. I could just ghost them. I could send the cease and desist letter now and never speak to them again. I could skip the dinner, stay home, order pizza, and watch a movie. But that would deny me the one thing I needed more than safety. I needed them to say it. I needed to hear them admit it. I needed to see their faces when they realized that the ATM was out of order permanently. I needed to shatter the delusion that they were good people who were just trying to help. I was not going to that restaurant to celebrate a birthday. I was going to a deposition. I went to my closet and picked out my outfit for the party. A sharp navy blue blazer, a crisp white shirt, tailored trousers. It was not a party dress. It was what I wore when I had to present a risk assessment to the board of directors. It was armor. I checked my phone one last time. The recording app was tested. The memory was clear. The battery was charged to 100%. I laid in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. I imagined the scene. I imagined the fake smiles. I imagined the surprise. "Don't embarrass us," my father had said. I closed my eyes and let a small, dark smile touch my lips. "Don't worry, Dad," I whispered to the empty room. "I won't be the one who is embarrassed." The trap was set. The bait was the only thing I had left to give them my presence. All they had to do was snap it shut. And I knew, with the certainty of a woman who had been studying them for 31 years, that they wouldn't be able to resist. They were greedy, and greed makes people stupid. Tomorrow, they would throw me a party, and I would burn the house down. Walking into Giovanni's table felt less like entering a venue for a celebration, and more like stepping into a quarantine zone. The main dining room was loud, filled with the chaotic, comforting noise of clinking silverware and families arguing over pizza toppings. But we were not sitting there. My mother had booked the Florence room at the back. It was a private space usually reserved for rehearsal dinners or corporate retirement parties, places where speeches needed to be made without the interruption of strangers. As the hostess led me through the restaurant, my heels sinking slightly into the patterned carpet, I realized the strategic brilliance of the location. A house party can get out of hand. Neighbors can call the police if there is shouting, but a private room in a restaurant, it offers the illusion of intimacy with the safety of public social pressure. If I made a scene here, I would be the villain. I would be the crazy woman screaming in a nice establishment. They were counting on my fear of public embarrassment to keep me compliant. The hostess opened the double doors, and the air inside the room was 10 degrees cooler than the hallway. "Here we are," she announced. I stepped inside. The setup was the first thing that hit me. It was surgical. The table was long and rectangular, covered in a white cloth that hung stiffly to the floor, but it was the seating arrangement that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. There was one chair at the head of the table, facing the door, facing the rest of the room. That was my seat. The other chairs were arranged in a horseshoe shape around it, ensuring that everyone else would be facing me, but I would be isolated. And then there were the angles. My family has never been subtle, but this was a production. Cole was already seated to my left. He had his phone propped up against a sugar shaker. But it wasn't just leaning there. He had a small, portable tripod, the kind influencers use, set up on the tablecloth. The lens was perfectly leveled at my face height. Bryn was across from him, to my right. She wasn't looking at me when I entered. She was furiously typing on her phone, her thumbs flying across the screen, her brow furrowed in concentration. She looked like a stage manager making sure the props were in place before the curtain rose. "Stella," Mom cried out, standing up from her seat near the foot of the table. She rushed toward me, arms open. "You made it. We were so worried you would get stuck in traffic." She hugged me. It was a tight, suffocating squeeze. She smelled of expensive perfume and nervous sweat. As she pulled away, she didn't look at my eyes. She looked over my shoulder, checking the door, checking the waiter, checking the lighting. "Sit, sit," Dad commanded, gesturing to the throne they had prepared for me. Guest of honor, I sat. The chair was heavy wood. I placed my purse on the floor next to me, keeping it close. "This is nice," I said, testing the acoustics of the room. My voice sounded flat, absorbed by the heavy drapes covering the fake windows. I didn't know Giovanni's had private rooms. "Only the best for our girl," Dad said. He was smiling, but his eyes were hard. He tapped the screen of his phone, which was also lying flat on the table. Face up, the waiter came in to take drink orders. I ordered an iced tea. I needed to be sharp. Everyone else was drinking wine or cocktails. Liquid courage, perhaps, or maybe they just wanted to numb themselves to the reality of what they were doing to their own flesh and blood. As the appetizers arrived, platters of fried calamari and stuffed mushrooms, the performance began in earnest. "You know," Mom started, her voice pitching up into that theatrical register I loathed. "Dad and I were just talking on the way over here about how responsible you are. Stella, weren't we? Curtis?" "Absolutely," Dad said, nodding vigorously. He picked up a mushroom but didn't eat it. He looked directly at Cole's phone lens, then at me. "In a world where so many young people are lost, you have really got your head on straight. Stella, good job. Good credit. Stability." It felt like he was reading a eulogy for a person who wasn't dead yet, or rather, reading a character reference letter. "We are so proud of how you handle your finances," Mom added. She swirled her Chardonnay. "It is a rare gift. Most people just want to spend. Spend, spend. But you build, you secure things." "I just pay my bills, Mom," I said, taking a sip of my tea. "It is not a superpower." Oh, don't be modest," Bryn chimed in. She had finally stopped texting and was now holding her phone up, ostensibly to take a selfie, but I could see the screen was in video mode. "You are the rock of the family. Stella, seriously, we would be lost without you." The praise was nauseating. It was too thick, too unearned. For years, they had mocked my frugality. They had called me boring, cheap, and uptight. Now, suddenly, my credit score was a moral virtue. They were building a narrative. If they recorded themselves praising me, and me accepting the praise, it would look like I was a willing participant in their schemes. It would look like we were a happy, functional unit where assets were shared and boundaries did not exist. I needed to break the rhythm. I needed a moment to breathe before the main event. "I need to use the restroom," I said, standing up. "Now?" Mom asked, a flash of irritation breaking through her mask. "The entrees are coming." "I will be right back," I said. I walked out of the room, feeling their eyes drilling into my back. As soon as the double doors closed behind me, the noise of the main restaurant hit me again. It was grounding. Real people eating real food, oblivious to the legal thriller playing out 10 yards away. I walked toward the restrooms, which were located near the front entrance, past the host stand. The restaurant was busy. Waiters were rushing past with trays of pasta. As I neared the host stand, I slowed down. The manager was busy talking to a customer about a reservation mix-up. The polished oak counter was cluttered with menus, pagers, and receipts, and there, sitting on top of a stack of takeout menus, was a manila envelope. It might have been invisible to anyone else, just a piece of office clutter. But I saw it. I saw the corner of a white paper sticking out. And written on the envelope in black marker, in my father's distinct, jagged handwriting, were 3 words: loan docs. Stella. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. They were so arrogant. They were so incredibly sloppy. They had brought the paperwork into the restaurant. They probably intended to have me sign something just in case the electronic signature didn't hold up. Or maybe this was the income verification document the bank had mentioned. They had left it at the front, likely asking the manager to hold it until they called for it. Or perhaps Dad had just forgotten it there when he checked in. I didn't touch it. I couldn't touch it. There were cameras in the lobby, and I didn't want to be seen tampering with it, but seeing it there, in the physical world, removed the last shred of doubt. This wasn't a party. It was a closing meeting. I went into the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face, careful not to ruin my makeup. I looked at myself in the mirror. "You are not the victim," I whispered. "You are the witness." I dried my hands. I took my phone out of my pocket. I opened the voice memo app. I hit the red record button. I placed the phone back in my purse, but I didn't drop it to the bottom. I slid it into the mesh side pocket. the microphone facing upward, unblocked by leather or lining. I took a deep breath, fixed my blazer, and walked back out. The walk back to the Florence room felt like walking to the gallows. But I knew I was the one holding the lever. When I re-entered the room, the atmosphere had shifted. The entrees had been cleared. Even though I hadn't eaten mine, the table was crumb-free. The lighting seemed to have been dimmed slightly. Everyone was seated. They stopped talking the moment I opened the door. "There she is," Dad said, a little too loud. "Just in time." I sat down. I checked my purse placement. It was on the floor, but leaning against the leg of the table, perfectly positioned to capture the audio. I looked around the table. That was when I locked eyes with Tessa. My cousin Tessa is 22. She is Bryn's younger cousin on my father's side, a sweet girl who is currently drowning in student debt and working 2 jobs. She was sitting at the far end of the U-shape, near the door. She wasn't holding her phone. Her hands were in her lap, twisted together. She looked at me, and her eyes were wide, filled with a mixture of fear and apology. She opened her mouth slightly, as if she wanted to say something. Her gaze darted to the cake box that was now sitting on a side table, then back to me. She knew. For a second, I thought she might break rank. I thought she might say, "Run, Stella." But then Aunt Marianne, Tessa's mother, nudged her hard with an elbow. Tessa flinched and looked down at the tablecloth. She picked up her phone and raised it like everyone else. "Cowardice is a family trait. It seems." "So," Mom said, clapping her hands together. The sound was sharp, like a pistol crack. "Who is ready for the best part of the evening?" "I am stuffed," I lied, leaning back in my chair. I couldn't eat another bite. "Oh, you will want this," Cole said. He adjusted his tripod. He checked the screen. "We got you something special, something that really represents us." "It represents our future," Bryn corrected him, her voice trembling slightly with excitement. "And how much you mean to it." "Dessert time," Mom announced. She waved her hand at the waiter who was hovering in the corner. The energy in the room spiked. It was electric and malicious. Every single person at the table adjusted their posture. Dad sat up straighter, puffing out his chest. Mom fixed her hair. Bryn cleared her throat. They were getting ready for the shot. They were getting ready for the moment they would capture my joyful acceptance of their betrayal. I sat perfectly still. I kept my face neutral, a mask of polite curiosity. Under the table, my hands were clenched so tight my fingernails were digging into my palms. The waiter stepped forward. He was carrying the silver dome I had seen earlier. He placed it in front of me. The room went silent. The only sound was the low hum of the HVAC system and the soft shuffling of shoes on carpet. "Open it," Dad commanded. "We want to see your face." "Happy birthday, Stella," Mom whispered, leaning in, her phone camera inches from my nose. The waiter reached out his gloved hand. He lifted the silver handle. The dome rose, and there it was, the white rectangle, the yellow border, the edible image that looked like a legal document, and the red words that screamed the truth of my existence in this family. "Happy birthday, our favorite co-signer." The air left the room. For them, it was the punchline. For me, it was the evidence. I looked at the cake. I let the image burn into my retinas. I let the silence stretch. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. I could feel them waiting. They were waiting for the laugh. They were waiting for the submission. I slowly raised my head. I looked at the lens of my father's camera. I looked at the lens of my mother's camera. I looked at Cole's tripod. I was recording. They were recording. We were all capturing the same moment, but we were seeing 2 completely different realities. They thought they were filming a comedy. I knew I was filming a crime documentary, and I was ready to deliver my line. The air in the Florence room did not just shift. It curdled. The atmosphere turned from a staged celebration into a hostage situation in the span of a single heartbeat. My father's face, previously flushed with the arrogance of a man who believes he has pulled off the perfect heist, drained of color. The red ruddiness of his cheeks turned to a sickly ash-gray paste. "What did you say?" my mother whispered. Her voice was no longer the chirpy theatrical instrument she had been using for the camera. It was small, sharp, and terrified. She lowered her iPhone, the screen still glowing, capturing the tablecloth instead of my reaction. I repeated, keeping my voice pitched perfectly for the microphone in my purse. Fraud report filed. I picked up my iced tea. My hand was steady. I took a sip. The ice cubes clinked against the glass, the sound abnormally loud in the sudden vacuum of silence. "You are joking," Cole scoffed, though his eyes were darting around the room as if looking for an exit. "God. Stella, you always have to be so dramatic. It is a joke. The cake is a joke." "Is the loan application a joke, Cole?" I asked. I did not look at him. I looked at the cake. "Is the inquiry from Liberty Automotive Finance a joke because the Federal Trade Commission does not have a sense of humor?" "You did not call the FTC," Dad snarled. The shock was wearing off, replaced by the cornered animal aggression I knew well. He slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "Don't you lie to me. You did not call anyone." "I did," I said calmly, "and I placed a credit freeze on all 3 bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Nothing gets in or out, which means that loan you are waiting for, the one pending that final document, it is dead. It will be flagged for review first thing Monday morning." The reality of the situation hit them like a physical wave. I watched it happen. I watched Bryn's mouth drop open as she realized her Cabo wedding was evaporating. I watched Cole's jaw clench as his German luxury car turned back into a pumpkin. "You stupid girl," Dad hissed. He stood up, looming over the table. "You have no idea what you have done. You have ruined everything. We did this for the family, for us." "For you," I corrected. "We are your parents," Mom wailed. She started to cry, but it was not the pretty, cinematic crying she usually did. It was ugly, panic-induced sobbing. "We gave you life. We raised you, and this is how you repay us, by calling the police on your own father." "I didn't call the police on my father," I said. "I called the police on an identity thief. If that happens to be you, that is a choice you made, not me." "Give me your phone," Cole said. His voice was low, dangerous. He stood up and moved around the table. He wasn't the goofy older brother anymore. He was the high school bully who had never grown up. "Cole, sit down," I said. "Give me the phone," he shouted. "You are recording this, aren't you? You little snake. I know you. Give it to me." He lunged. He reached for my purse on the floor. I did not scream. I did not fight him for the bag. I simply leaned back and spoke clearly, projecting my voice toward the open door where the waiter was undoubtedly listening in horror. "Don't touch me." I said it with the authority of a judge banging a gavel. Cole's hand froze inches from the leather strap of my bag. He looked at me, and for the first time, he saw something in my eyes that stopped him. He saw that I wasn't afraid of him. He saw that I was hoping he would touch me, because if he touched me, I would add assault to the list of charges. "Don't touch my property," I said, "and sit down, unless you want to explain to the staff why you are attacking a woman in a restaurant." Cole hesitated. He looked at Dad for instruction. Dad was breathing heavily, his fists clenched on the white tablecloth. "Sit down." "Cole," Dad muttered, "she is bluffing. She wouldn't destroy her own family. She doesn't have the guts." Cole retreated, sinking back into his chair. But his eyes never left me. He looked like he wanted to kill me. "I am not bluffing," I said. "I have the case number. Would you like to hear it?" I recited the number from memory. 7 digits. I spoke them slowly. "Now," I said, folding my hands on the table, "I have one question, just one. And if you answer it honestly, maybe I will tell the investigators that I know the people involved and we can handle it civilly. Maybe." It was a lie. Of course. There was no going back. But I needed the confession. "Who used my information?" I asked. "Who actually filled out the application? Was it you, Dad, or was it you, Mom?" Silence. They looked at each other. The united front was crumbling. They were doing the mental calculus of liability. It wasn't like that, Mom stammered, wiping mascara from her cheeks. We just needed a bridge, just a temporary bridge. The business is slow. Stella, your father is under so much pressure. We were going to pay it back. We always pay it back. You never pay it back, I said. Who filled out the form? It was supposed to be a surprise, Bryn blurted out. We all turned to look at her. Bryn, the princess, the one who could never keep a secret if it meant she could be the center of attention. She looked frantic, her eyes darting between me and Dad. What? I asked. It was a surprise, Bryn insisted, her voice shrill. We were going to tell you tonight. We were going to show you the car and the venue deposit and say, look what we did together. We thought you would be happy to be included. We thought you would feel important. There it was, the confession. So you all knew, I said. You, Cole, Mom, Dad, you all planned this. You accessed my personal data, forged my signature, and set up this dinner to manipulate me into accepting it retroactively. Stop saying forged, Dad barked. It is family business. You are my daughter. What is yours is ours. No, I said. That is not how the law works, and that is not how I work. I reached into my pocket. My fingers found my phone. I felt the smooth glass of the screen. I didn't need to look at it. I knew exactly where the icon was. I pressed the button, the command sent, the email to Uncle Bob, to the Attorney General's tip line, to my cousin Tessa. It was gone. It was hurtling through the digital ether, carrying the PDF of the credit report and the audio file of the last 20 minutes. Well, I said, standing up, I think I have everything I need. Where are you going? Mom gasped. She stood up, reaching across the table as if to grab my hand, but she stopped short. You can't leave. We haven't cut the cake. We haven't fixed this. There is no fixing this. Diane, I said. I didn't call her Mom. The cake is ruined, and so is the credit score you tried to steal. I picked up my purse. I made sure the phone was secure. Stella, if you walk out that door, Dad threatened, his voice dropping to a gravelly rumble. You are dead to us. Do you hear me? You are out. No inheritance, no family holidays, nothing. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had taught me to ride a bike, the man who had walked me down the aisle at my sister's first wedding, the man who had just tried to sell my financial future for $25,000. Dad, I said, I have been dead to you for years. You just forgot to bury me because you were too busy checking my pockets for loose change. I turned around. And Cole, I said, pausing at the door. Enjoy the bus. I walked out. I didn't run. I walked with a measured, deliberate pace. I passed the waiter who was standing by the service station, holding a pitcher of water, looking pale. Check is on them, I said to him. I pushed through the front doors into the cool night air. The wind hit my face, drying the sweat I hadn't realized was beading on my hairline. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced them to move. Left foot, right foot. I got into my car. I locked the doors immediately. I started the engine. My phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again. A rapid-fire staccato of vibrations against the center console. I didn't look at them until I was 3 miles away. Pulled into the well-lit parking lot of a pharmacy. I needed to breathe. I needed to make sure I wasn't being followed. I checked the rearview mirror. No black SUVs. No angry brother. I picked up the phone. Mom, 8:14 p.m. Stella, come back inside right now. Stop this nonsense. Everyone is looking. Cole, 8:15 p.m. p.m. You are a psycho. Seriously, a psycho. Pick up the phone. Bryn, 8:15 p.m. You ruined my engagement dinner. I hate you. I literally hate you. Dad, 8:17 p.m. If you don't call the bank and cancel that fraud alert in the next 10 minutes, do not bother coming home for Christmas. I mean it. You are destroying this family over a misunderstanding. Mom, 8:20 p.m. Stella, please, your father is having chest pains. Do you want to kill him? Please answer. Mom, 8:22 p.m. We love you. We were just trying to help. Why can't you see that Cole, 8:25 p.m.? Watch your back. I read the messages with a clinical detachment. The progression was textbook. Denial, anger, guilt-tripping, threats. Watch your back, I read aloud. I took a screenshot of Cole's text. I saved it to the evidence folder. I drove the rest of the way home in silence. When I got to my condo, I didn't just lock the door. I wedged a chair under the handle. It was irrational. Perhaps. But the adrenaline was fading, and the fear was creeping in. They were desperate people, and desperate people are dangerous. I went straight to my computer. I plugged my phone in. I transferred the audio recording of the dinner. I named the file Giovanni Dinner Confession, Marta 14. Wave. I listened to it. The sound quality was crisp. You could hear the clatter of forks. You could hear my mother's fake laugh. You could hear the exact moment the cake was revealed. And then, clear as day, you could hear Bryn's voice. It was supposed to be a surprise. And Dad's voice. What is yours is ours. I sat back in my ergonomic office chair. My apartment was quiet. It was perfectly clean. It was safe. I had done it. I had pulled the trigger. The bomb had gone off, and I had walked away from the explosion with the detonator in my pocket. But as I looked at the waveform of my family's voices on the screen, jagged peaks and valleys of betrayal, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I felt an immense, crushing exhaustion. I opened the folder where I kept my credit reports. I took a screenshot of the Fraud Alert Active banner that was now displayed across the top of my profile. I created a new subfolder titled Legal Actions. I was not just Stella Perry anymore. I was the plaintiff. I was the victim. And starting tomorrow morning, I would be the nightmare they never saw coming. My phone buzzed again. Uncle Bob, 8:45 p.m. I just got your email. Call me, now. I stared at the screen. Uncle Bob, the shark, the one person who might actually believe me. I took a deep breath, picked up the phone, and dialed. Hello? He answered on the first ring. His voice was gravelly and serious. Uncle Bob, I said. It is Stella. I listened to the recording, he said. There was no small talk. Did they actually put that on a cake? Yes, I said. They did. Okay, he said. I could hear the sound of paper shuffling in the background. Listen to me very carefully. Stella, do not talk to them. Do not text them back. Do not answer the door. You have started a war, kid, and if you want to win it, you need to stop being their daughter and start being my client. I am ready, I said. Good, he said. Get some sleep. You are going to need it. I hung up. I didn't sleep. I sat there in the dark, watching the fraud alert icon blink on my screen, waiting for the sun to rise on the ruins of my family. The sun came up on Sunday morning. But it did not bring any warmth. It just brought a harsh, gray light that exposed the dust motes dancing in my living room and the grim reality of what I had to do. I had not slept. I had spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying the sound of my father's voice threatening to cut me off, as if he had anything left to give me other than debt. At 9:15 in the morning, there was a knock at my door. I froze. I was standing in the kitchen, holding a mug of black coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. My first thought was that it was Cole. I pictured him standing there, angry and impulsive, ready to kick the door in. I checked the security camera feed on my phone. It was not Cole. It was a man in a windbreaker holding a clipboard, a courier. I opened the door, keeping the chain lock engaged. Stella Perry, the man asked. He looked bored. Yes, I said. Delivery. Sign here. I undid the chain, signed the digital pad, and took the thick envelope. It was heavy. The return address was the law offices of Arthur P. Miller. I knew the name. Arthur Miller was my father's golfing buddy, a strip mall attorney who mostly handled DUIs and zoning disputes. I closed the door and tore the envelope open. It was a cease and desist letter. Dear Ms. Perry, We represent your parents, Diane and Curtis Perry. It has come to our attention that on the evening of March 14th, you made public defamatory statements regarding our client's financial integrity in the presence of third parties at Giovanni's table. Furthermore, we understand you are threatening to disseminate private family matters to law enforcement agencies. You are hereby ordered to cease and desist all defamatory actions. Failure to comply will result in a civil suit for libel, slander, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound that scraped my throat. They were accusing me of defamation. Nowhere in the 2-page letter did it mention the loan. Nowhere did it mention the $25,000. Nowhere did it mention the credit application. They were trying to frame this as a temper tantrum. They were trying to scare me into silence by threatening to sue me for telling the truth. They had made a critical tactical error. They assumed I would read this and panic. They assumed I would see a lawyer's letterhead and revert to the scared little girl who didn't want to make waves. They forgot that I work in risk management. I do not get scared of paper. I get scared of unmitigated exposure. And right now, they were the ones who were exposed. I did not call Arthur P. Miller. I did not call my parents. Instead, I picked up my phone and called Madeline Shore. Madeline was a recommendation from Uncle Bob. She was not a strip mall lawyer. She was a partner at a boutique firm downtown that specialized in financial fraud and complex civil litigation. Her hourly rate was $450, and she was worth every penny. "Can you come in tomorrow at 8:30? Her assistant asked when I called. "I will be there," I said. The rest of Sunday was a blur of preparation. I printed everything, the screenshots of the texts, the credit report, the transcripts I typed up from the audio recording. I organized them into a binder with tabs. Monday morning, 8:30, I sat in Madeline Shore's office. It was a corner office with a view of the lake, smelling of leather and expensive coffee. Madeline was a woman in her 50s with sharp, silver hair and glasses that looked like they could cut glass. She read the cease and desist letter first. She didn't look impressed. She tossed it onto her desk like it was a piece of junk mail. "This is garbage," Madeline said. Her voice was calm, authoritative. "Arthur Miller is trying to bully you. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Stella, if they actually stole your identity, you could take out a billboard on the highway announcing it, and they couldn't sue you for a dime." She leaned forward, clasping her hands. "But we need to be clear about something," she continued. "If we proceed, this is not a family dispute. The moment you file the official affidavits, the state takes over. Your parents, your brother, your sister, they stop being your relatives. They become defendants. Are you ready for that? They stopped being my relatives when they put a loan application on my birthday cake," I said. Madeline nodded. "Good. Then here's the strategy. We do not respond to this letter. We ignore it. Instead, we go on the offensive. You need to file a formal police report for identity theft today. Not an online tip, a physical report at the precinct. You need a case number. Once you have that, we file a fraud affidavit with the bank and the credit bureaus. That legally absolves you of the debt while the investigation is pending." "What about the bank?" I asked. "The loan is still in underwriting." "We will kill it today," Madeline said. "I will draft a letter of representation to the bank's fraud department. We will attach the police report. That money will never hit your father's account." I left her office feeling lighter. I had a general now. I wasn't fighting alone. My next stop was the police station. Sitting in the plastic chair of the precinct waiting room was a humbling experience. I was surrounded by people having the worst days of their lives. When my name was called, I walked to the desk and spoke to an officer who looked like he had not slept in 24 hours. "I need to report a case of identity theft," I said. "Fill this out," he said, sliding a clipboard across the counter. I filled it out. Suspect name Curtis Perry. Suspect name Diane Perry. Writing their names in the suspect box felt like committing a mortal sin. My hand shook slightly, but then I remembered the text from Cole Watch Your Back. I remembered the smirk on my father's face before the cake came out. I steadied my hand. I wrote the names. I signed the bottom. Do you want to press charges? The officer asked when he reviewed the form. Yes, I said. This is a felony amount, he warned me, looking up. If this goes to the prosecutor, your parents could be looking at prison time, identity theft, wire fraud, forgery. It adds up. I understand, I said. Okay. He typed something into his computer. Here is your case number. A detective will be assigned within 5 business days. I took the slip of paper. It was just a small, thermal-printed receipt, but it was the most powerful weapon I had ever held. From the station, I went to a coffee shop and opened my laptop. I logged into the bank's fraud portal. I uploaded the police report. I uploaded the identity theft affidavit from the Federal Trade Commission website. Then, I called the bank's fraud department again. This time, I didn't get Sarah, the customer service rep. I got a specialist named Marcus. Ms. Perry, Marcus said, his tone serious. We received your alert. I am looking at the application now. We have frozen the process immediately. Thank you, I said. I want to know how this happened. How did they get past the security questions? We are investigating that, Marcus said. But I can tell you this. The application was submitted online. We have logged the IP address. It matches the IP address used to log into the account of the primary applicant, Curtis Perry, for the last 6 months. It originated from a residential address in Cleveland Heights. That is their house, I said. We also see that the electronic signature for the cosigner was created using the same device, 2 minutes after the primary signature. Marcus added, That is a major red flag. It suggests the same person signed both names. I was not at their house on that date, I said. I can prove it. I was at work. I have badge swipe logs. That will be very helpful, Marcus said. We will be turning this over to our internal investigation team. You are not liable for this loan. Ms. Perry, we will issue a letter confirming that within 7 days. I hung up. The trap had snapped shut. The digital footprint was undeniable. They had signed my name from their own computer, in their own living room, thinking I would never check. But just as I was beginning to feel the relief of safety, the emotional fallout began. My phone started ringing at noon. It wasn't my parents this time. They were smart enough to go radio silent after the legal threat. It was the flying monkeys. First, it was my Aunt Marianne. Stella, she said, her voice trembling. What are you doing? Your mother called me. She is hysterical. She says you are trying to put Curtis in jail. I am not trying to do anything, Aunt Marianne, I said, keeping my voice level. I am protecting my financial future. They tried to take out a $25,000 loan in my name without asking. That is a crime. It was a misunderstanding, Marianne cried. They were going to pay it back. You know how your father is. He just gets in over his head. But to go to the police, Stella, think about the reputation of the family. Think about your grandmother. What would she say? Grandma is dead, I said cold. And if she were alive, she would tell Dad to get a job instead of stealing from his children. You are being vindictive, Marianne spat. You always were the cold one. You think you are better than everyone else because you have a fancy job. You are going to destroy this family over money. I am not destroying the family, I said. I am just refusing to pay for it anymore. I hung up and blocked her number. Then came a text from my cousin David. Bro, really cops. That's low. Blocked. Then a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my father's sister, Aunt Linda, who lived in Florida and hadn't spoken to me in 3 years. She left a voicemail calling me an ungrateful brat and telling me I should be ashamed of myself. I saved the voicemail. It went into the evidence folder. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a hurricane. The wind was howling. Debris was flying. But I had to stay planted. I had to stay rooted in the facts. The facts were my anchor. Fact, they committed fraud. Fact, they lied. Fact, they were not sorry. I was about to close my laptop and go home when a message popped up on my screen. It was from Tessa, my cousin Tessa. The one who had looked at me with apologetic eyes at the dinner, the one who had been silenced by her mother's elbow. Tessa. Hey, Stella. I know you blocked my mom. I am sorry. I hesitated. I didn't want to engage. I didn't want to hear more excuses. But something about Tessa's demeanor at the party made me pause. Stella. It is okay. Tessa, it is not your fault. Three little dots danced on the screen for a long time. She was typing, deleting, typing again. Tessa. I need to tell you something. I can't keep it inside. It is eating me up. Stella. What is it, Tessa? It wasn't just a surprise for your birthday. They have been planning this for months. I heard them talking about it at Christmas. Uncle Curtis said he needed a clean profile to attach to the loan because his credit was shot. Aunt Diane said, Use Stella. She never checks her reports. She trusts us. I stared at the screen. The air in the coffee shop seemed to vanish. Use Stella. She never checks. She trusts us. It wasn't desperation. It was calculation. They had profiled me. They had identified my trust as a weakness and exploited it with the precision of a surgeon. Tessa and Stella. There is more. Bryn knew too. She told me she needed the loan to go through so she could put the deposit down on the venue before the prices went up. She said, Stella owes me this. She has everything and I have nothing. My stomach turned. Bryn, my sister, the one I had bought prom dresses for, the one I had tutored in math. She felt entitled to my identity because she was jealous of my stability. Stella. Thank you for telling me. Tessa. Would you be willing to say this to a lawyer, Tessa? I don't know. My mom would kill me. Stella. You don't have to decide now. Just thank you. I closed the chat. I sat back and looked out the window at the busy street. This was not just about one loan. This was a conspiracy. A conspiracy of three people, my father, my mother, and my sister, who had sat around a holiday table, eating turkey, and plotted how to harvest my life to subsidize theirs. I realized then that Madeline was right. They weren't my family. They were a syndicate. I opened a new document on my computer. I titled it, Witness List. Tessa Cousin. Can testify to premeditation. The waiter at Giovanni's. Can testify to the co-signer cake and the reaction. Sarah Bank Rep. Can testify to the timeline of the application. I needed one more thing. I needed to know how they got the document notarized, if the bank required a final income verification, or any other paperwork. Usually, big loans need a wet signature or a notary for certain parts. I remembered the envelope I saw at the restaurant. Loan docs. Stella. If there was a notary stamp on any of those papers, that notary was either a fool or an accomplice. I picked up my phone and called Madeline. I filed the police report, I said, and the bank has the IP logs. But I think we need to go deeper. What do you mean? Madeline asked. My cousin just told me they planned this at Christmas, I said. It was premeditated, and Madeline, I need to see the full loan file. I need to see every piece of paper they submitted, because if they forged my signature on a government document or a notarized affidavit, we have them on more than just wire fraud. We will get it, Madeline said. I will subpoena the entire loan file from the bank. If there is a notary seal on anything, we will find out who stamped it. Good, I said, because I am done playing defense. I hung up and walked out of the coffee shop. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across the pavement. I felt a cold resolve settling in my chest. They had bet on my silence. They had bet on my love. They had bet wrong. The vibration of my phone on the wooden table of the coffee shop felt like a warning tremor before an earthquake. I looked down. It was another message from Tessa. I had asked her if she would testify, and she had gone silent. I assumed fear had silenced her, the same way it silences everyone in my family when the matriarch and patriarch tighten the leash. But I was wrong. Tessa was not silent. She was digging. An image loaded on my screen. It was a screenshot of a group chat. The name of the chat group was Operation Cabo. My stomach lurched. Cabo, the location of Bryn's wedding. I zoomed in on the image. It was a conversation between my mother, my father, and Bryn. The timestamp was 2 weeks ago. Mom. The baker says they can't put a legal disclaimer on a cake. It's too much text. Dad. Just put the keywords, cosigner, make it big. If she sees it and eats it, and we have it on video, that is implied consent. It proves she knew about the arrangement and accepted the benefit the party. Bryn, are you sure that holds up in court, Dad? It doesn't have to hold up in court. It just has to hold up enough to scare her into not disputing it. If we have a video of her laughing at the cosigner cake, she looks complicit. She can't claim identity theft if she is celebrating the loan. I stared at the pixels until they blurred. The cruelty was not an accident. The humiliation was not a byproduct of their clumsiness. It was the architecture of the trap. The party was not a celebration. It was a deposition. They wanted to trick me into a performance of consent. They believed that if they could just get a clip of me smiling next to the word cosigner, they could blackmail me into accepting the debt. They were not just thieves. They were directors. And I was the unwitting actress in a film designed to bankrupt me. I saved the image to the evidence folder. I texted Tessa back 2 words, keep digging. The next morning, I was back in Madeline Shore's office. The leather chair felt familiar now, a battle station. Madeline looked different today. She wasn't just professional, she was angry. Lawyers like Madeline usually keep a cool distance, but what she had found in the subpoenaed documents had breached her professional detachment. You need to see this. Stella, she said, sliding a thick stack of papers across the mahogany desk. Is that the loan file? I asked. It is the entire underwriting packet, she said. The bank faxed it over this morning after we served them the fraud affidavit. It is worse than we thought. I opened the folder. The first page was the standard application form. Applicant Curtis Perry. Co-applicant Stella Perry. Look at the income declaration, Madeline said, pointing a manicured finger at line 12. I looked. Beside my name, under annual income, they had listed a number that made my breath catch. They had listed my income as $300,000. I don't make that much, I whispered. I make good money, but not that much. They inflated your income to secure a higher limit, Madeline said. That is bank fraud, federal bank fraud. But keep going. Look at the stated purpose of the loan. I scrolled my eyes down to the section marked Loan Purpose, Home Improvement, Debt Consolidation. That is a lie, I said. They are not renovating the house. Turn the page, Madeline commanded. I flipped the sheet. Attached to the application was a copy of a contract. It wasn't for lumber or contractors. It was a deposit invoice for the Sapphire Sands Resort in Cabo San Lucas. The amount was exactly $25,000. It was for the wedding. I felt a cold, hard knot form in my chest. They weren't saving the family home. They weren't paying off medical bills. They were stealing my identity to pay for a party. They were risking my financial livelihood so Bryn could have ocean views and imported flowers for 6 hours. They sold me for a reception, I said. The words tasted like ash. It gets darker, Madeline said. She pulled a specific document from the bottom of the pile. It was a notarized power of attorney form. This document supposedly gave my father the legal right to sign on my behalf. At the bottom, there was a signature that looked vaguely like mine, a shaky, traced imitation and a stamp, a notary public seal. Notary Public Elias Vance. Commission expires May 2025. I never signed this, I said. I have never met an Elias Vance. I know, Madeline said. Her voice dropped, becoming deadly serious. Because Elias Vance does not exist, at least, not as a practicing notary. I looked up at her. What do you mean? I ran the commission number, Madeline explained. Elias Vance was a notary in Cleveland Heights. He retired his commission 2 years ago. He is currently living in an assisted living facility in Arizona. He has severe dementia. The room went silent. The implications hung in the air like smoke. So, I said slowly, piecing it together, they didn't just forge my signature. They forged the notary's signature too. Someone is using a dead stamp, Madeline said. This isn't just your parents doing a bad job of cutting and pasting. They went to a professional. There are places, shadow offices, that will notarize anything for $50. They use old stamps from retired or deceased notaries to make it look official. It is organized crime. Stella. Where? I asked. Where did this get stamped? Madeline pointed to a faint address, printed on the fax header of the power of attorney form. It wasn't my parents' house. It was an address on the east side of town, in a strip mall I drove past on my way to the airport. Quick check cashing doc prep. I am going there, I said, standing up. Stella, Madeline warned. Do not engage. I am not going to engage, I said. I am going to verify. I drove to the address. It was a gray Tuesday afternoon. The strip mall was depressing. A row of businesses clinging to life. A vape shop, a discount liquor store, and quick check cashing. The windows were covered in neon signs advertising payday loans, wire transfers, and notary services. I parked across the street. I watched. I saw a woman walk in with a stack of papers. She looked nervous. 10 minutes later, she walked out. The papers now in a folder. I took a picture of the storefront. I took a picture of the license plate of the car parked in the manager spot. My parents hadn't just made a mistake. They had physically driven to this place, paid a criminal to stamp a fake document using a stolen notary identity, and then submitted it to a federally insured bank. They had walked through every step of a felony with their eyes wide open. My phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen. I knew I shouldn't answer. Madeline had said no contact, but I needed to hear the pivot. I needed to hear the next phase of the script. I answered, but I didn't say hello. I just pressed record and held the phone to my ear. Stella. Her voice was cracked, wet. She sounded like a woman on the edge of a breakdown. Stella, please don't hang up. We just got a letter from the bank. They froze everything. Your father. He can't breathe. Stella. The ambulance number is 911, I said. Not my number. How can you be so cruel? She sobbed. We are losing the house, Stella. That is why we did it. We didn't want to worry you. We are 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank is threatening foreclosure. We just needed the loan to catch up so we wouldn't be on the street. We did it to save the family home. It was a compelling performance. The sobbing was visceral. The desperation sounded real. But I had the invoice. The Sapphire Sands Resort, I said. The sobbing stopped instantly. The silence on the other end was absolute. What? She whispered. The loan wasn't for the mortgage. Diane, I said. It was for Bryn's wedding in Cabo. I have the invoice. I have the power of attorney you faked at that check-cashing place on East 9th Street. I know about Elias Vance. That's not true, she stammered. But the energy was gone. She sounded small, defeated. I checked the county recorder's office online 10 minutes ago. I continued, my voice devoid of mercy. There is no foreclosure notice on the house. Your mortgage is current. You didn't steal my identity to save the roof over your head. You stole it so you could throw a party in Mexico and pretend you are rich. Bryn deserves a nice day, she snapped, the mask slipping completely. The pity was gone, replaced by the ugly entitlement that was her true face. She is your sister. You have so much, and you share nothing. You sit in that condo with your perfect credit and your retirement accounts, hoarding it all. We just wanted to even the scales. Even the scales, I asked. You committed 4 felonies to pay for a cocktail hour. We would have paid it back, she screamed. After the wedding, Cole has a deal coming through. Cole never has a deal coming through, I said. And you never pay it back. You just find a new host to attach yourselves to. Well, I am removing the tick, Mom, and I am burning the head so it doesn't grow back. If you pursue this, she hissed, you will never walk through our door again. That is the plan, I said. I hung up. I sat in my car, staring at the neon sign of the check cashing place. Quick Check. It was so banal. Such a cheap, dirty little place to sell your daughter. I realized then that I had been looking for a reason to forgive them. Deep down, a part of me had hoped that maybe they were in trouble. Maybe they were sick. Maybe they were being blackmailed. If they were in danger, I could understand the desperation. I could perhaps justify the betrayal as a panic response, but there was no danger. There was only vanity. They were willing to destroy my life to saddle me with years of debt, to ruin my professional reputation, to potentially drag me into legal hell just so they could maintain the illusion of wealth for a few hundred likes on Instagram. It wasn't a tragedy, it was a mechanism. My family was a machine designed to consume resources, and I was just fuel. I started the car. I didn't drive home. I drove back to Madeline's office. I walked in without an appointment. The receptionist looked up, surprised. But I walked past her to Madeline's open door. "Stella," Madeline asked, looking up from her computer. "I want to go for the throat," I said. Madeline took off her glasses. She looked at me, assessing the change in my demeanor. I wasn't the scared daughter anymore. I wasn't the shocked victim. "What happened?" she asked. "They lied about the mortgage," I said. "It was for the wedding, and they used a fake notary because they knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't a mistake. It was a business decision. They calculated the risk of me finding out versus the reward of the loan, and they decided I was a safe bet because I am weak." I pulled the chair out and sat down. "I am not weak," I said, "and I am not paying for Bryn's bouquet." "Okay," Madeline said, opening a fresh legal pad. "If we are going for the throat, we don't just file for fraud dismissal, we file a civil suit for damages. We subpoena the phone records to prove conspiracy. We name the notary service as a co-defendant to pressure them into flipping on your parents. We make it so painful, so expensive, and so public that they will wish they had never heard the name Stella Perry." "Do it," I said, "but I want one more thing." "What?" "I want the video," I said. "The video they were taking at the restaurant, the one where they wanted me to smile at the cake." "Why?" Madeline asked. "We don't need it." "I need it," I said. "I need to see it. I need to remind myself, every single day, what they look like when they think they have won, because I never want to be that vulnerable again." Madeline nodded. "We will add it to the discovery list." I walked out of the office into the fading light. My phone was silent now. I had blocked them all. My mother, my father, Bryn, Cole, the aunts, the cousins who sided with them. The silence was profound. For the first time in 31 years, the noise of their demands was gone. I drove home, and as I passed the highway exit for my parents' neighborhood, I didn't feel a pull. I didn't feel guilt. I looked at the exit sign, and I just kept driving. I was going home to an empty apartment, but it was mine. The bills were paid, the doors were locked, and for the first time, the person inside was safe. On Wednesday morning, the invisible wall between family drama and federal investigation finally shattered. It started with a phone call from a number with a Delaware area code. I was sitting at my kitchen island, nursing a cup of tea and watching the rain streak against the patio doors. The silence in my condo was heavy, but it was a protective weight. "This is Stella Perry," I answered. "Ms. Perry? This is Investigator Thorne with the Special Investigations Unit at First National Bank. I am the lead on the fraud case referenced in your police report." His voice was dry, precise, and utterly devoid of the emotional manipulation I had been swimming in for 31 years. It was the voice of a man who dealt in facts. "Thank you for calling. Mr. Thorne," I said. "I have reviewed the affidavit and the IP logs," Thorne said. "The digital footprint is extensive. However, to move this to the next stage of prosecution and to permanently discharge the debt from your name, I need to corroborate the intent. Your attorney, Ms. Shore, mentioned a recording." "Yes," I said. "I recorded the dinner where the documents were presented to me." "Can you upload that to our secure portal?" he asked. "Specifically, we are looking for any verbal admission that the application was submitted without your prior knowledge." "I can do that right now," I said. "You will hear my sister say it was supposed to be a surprise. You will hear my father admit they intended to use my credit profile." "Excellent," Thorne said. "That is the nail in the coffin. Ms. Perry, once we have that, We will be forwarding our findings to the district attorney's office in Cuyahoga County. I should warn you, once that happens, the bank ceases to be the entity you are dealing with. It becomes the state versus Curtis and Diane Perry. I understand, I said. Are you sure? Thorne asked, a flicker of humanity entering his tone. Most victims back down at this stage when the perpetrators are family. If you withdraw the claim now, you are liable for the $25,000 plus interest. If you proceed, they are looking at felony charges. I looked at the rain. I thought about the text from my mother. We did it to save the family home. I thought about the invoice for the resort in Cabo. I am sure, I said. Send me the link. I uploaded the file. Watching the progress bar fill to 100% felt like watching a bridge burn. I wasn't striking the match. I was just refusing to be the water. By Wednesday afternoon, the reality of the situation must have hit the Perry household. The bank likely froze their other accounts pending investigation. The cease and desist letter from Arthur Miller had been ignored. The silence from my end was deafening. They realized I wasn't playing a game. At 2:00, my phone rang. It was Aunt Marianne. I had blocked her cell. But she was calling from her work landline, a floral shop in the suburbs. I debated ignoring it. But curiosity, that dangerous itch, made me slide the answer button. Stella. Her voice was a hushed whisper. She sounded like she was hiding in the back room. Make it quick, Marianne, I said. I am recording. I know, she said. I know you are recording everything. That is why I'm calling. I wanted to warn you. Warn me about what? Your dad is talking about countersuing, she whispered hurriedly. He is telling everyone you hacked his computer. He is spinning a story. Stella, but that is not why I called. She paused. I heard her take a ragged breath. I need you to know I didn't agree with it, she said. When they brought it up at Christmas, I told them it was a bad idea. I told Diane you would find out. You told them I would find out, I repeated. Not that it was wrong, not that it was illegal. Just that I might catch them. They laughed at me, Marianne confessed. Your mother, she said, not to worry. She said, Stella is the easiest one to control. She is so desperate for a pat on the head. She will sign anything if we tell her we are proud of her. They actually toasted to it. Stella. They toasted to how manageable you are. My hand tightened around the phone. Manageable. Easiest to control. Is that all? I asked, my voice cold. No, Marianne said. There is one more thing. You aren't the first one. Stella. Do you remember your cousin, Mike, Uncle Frank's son? Yeah, I said. He moved to Oregon 5 years ago. He never comes back for holidays. He didn't just move, Marianne said. He ran. Your parents, they borrowed his information when he was staying with them during college. They opened a credit card in his name to pay for a renovation on the rental property. Mike found out. He threatened to go to the cops. I felt the blood drain from my face. What happened? They guilted him, she said. They cried. They told him he would kill his grandmother with the stress. Mike signed an NDA and agreed to pay off half the debt just to get away from them. They buried it. Stella. They are good at burying things. Thank you, Marianne, I said. I just don't want to be involved, she pleaded. Please don't subpoena me. I can't promise that, I said. But telling the truth helps. I hung up. I added Cousin Mike to my list of potential witnesses. This wasn't a desperate act of parents in a bind. It was a predator's pattern. They were serial financial abusers. I called Madeline immediately. They did it before, I told her. My cousin Mike, 5 years ago. That is excellent, Madeline said. It establishes a pattern of conduct. It destroys the one-time mistake defense. I am going to file a motion for discovery this afternoon. We are going to ask for everything. Stella, bank statements for the last 7 years, emails, text messages, and specifically, any settlement agreements involving family members. They will shred everything, I said. Let them, Madeline replied with a dark satisfaction. Spoliation of evidence is a separate crime and often leads to a default judgment. If they delete a single text message after receiving this subpoena, the judge will hand us the victory on a silver platter. The pressure was mounting. I could feel it radiating from across town. I stayed inside, working remotely, checking my security cameras every 10 minutes. At 6:30 in the evening, the doorbell rang. I looked at the monitor. It was Cole. He looked rough. His hair was unwashed, and he was wearing a wrinkled hoodie. He wasn't driving the new German car. He was driving Mom's old minivan. I didn't open the door. I walked to the entryway and spoke through the heavy wood. "Go away, Cole." "Stella, open the door," he said. His voice wasn't angry like it had been at the restaurant. It sounded tired. "I just want to talk. No phones, no lawyers, just brother and sister. We stopped being brother and sister when you tried to steal $25,000 from me," I said. "I didn't steal anything," he protested, leaning his forehead against the door frame. "I just went along with it. Mom and Dad said it was handled. They said you would be cool with it." "And you believed that?" I asked. "You believed I would be cool with financing a luxury car I don't get to drive." "Come on, Stell," he whined. The old nickname made me cringe. "It is getting crazy out there. Mom is a wreck. Dad is talking about selling the boat. Can't we just work something out like a payment plan? I will pay you back. I promise. Every month." I opened the door, leaving the storm door locked. The glass barrier stood between us. Cole looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. He thought he had worn me down. He thought I was the manageable sister again. "A payment plan?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, nodding eagerly. "I will get a job. A real one. I will pay you $500 a month. Just drop the police report. Please." I pulled a piece of paper from my pocket. I had prepared it for exactly this moment. "Let's do some math. Cole," I said. "The loan is $25,000. The interest rate on that loan, because it is unsecured, is likely around 12%. But let's talk about the legal fees I have already incurred. That is another $5,000. So we are at $30,000. Cole blinked. "Okay, so 30,000? I can do that?" "Can you?" I asked. "At $500 a month, it would take you 5 years just to pay the principal, ignoring the interest. With interest, you are looking at 7 or 8 years. Do you have 8 years of discipline in you?" "Cole, you haven't held a job for 8 months." He looked down at his sneakers. "And here's the other number," I said. 15. That is the number of years in prison for federal wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. That is what you are facing as an accomplice." "I am not an accomplice," he shouted, slapping the glass. "I didn't sign the papers." "You were in the group chat," I said calmly. "Tessa sent me the screenshots. Operation Cabo. You knew, you discussed the cake, you discussed the video, you are a co-conspirator, Cole, and when the FBI pulls your phone records, they will see exactly how involved you were." Cole's face went pale. He stepped back from the door. "If you stay quiet," he whispered. "Everything is fine. Why can't you just stay quiet? Why do you have to ruin everything?" "I am not ruining anything," I said. "I am just turning on the lights. If the room is dirty, that is not the fault of the light switch." "You are cold," he said, shaking his head. "You are really cold. Stella, get off my porch," I said. "And tell Mom and Dad that if they come here, I will call the police for trespassing. The next time we speak, it will be under oath." Cole stared at me for a long moment. He looked like he didn't recognize me. Then he turned and walked back to the minivan. He drove away slowly, defeated. I locked the door. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. If you stay quiet, everything is fine. That was the family motto. That was the inscription on the Perry family crest. Silence was the glue that held their lies together. And I had dissolved it. I went back to my computer. There was a new email from Tessa. Subject, I found it. There was no text in the body of the email, just a video file attached. I hesitated. I knew this was going to hurt. Madeline had subpoenaed it, but Tessa had found it first. This was the video from my mother's phone, or maybe my father's. that they had shared in the group chat before the party to hype themselves up. I clicked play. The video was shaky. It was taken in my parents' kitchen. The lighting was warm. There was a bottle of wine on the counter, half empty. My mother was holding the phone, filming selfie style. My father was behind her, cutting a slice of cheese. Bryn was sitting at the island, looking at wedding venues on her laptop. "So, the baker called," Mom said to the camera, giggling. She was clearly tipsy. She asked if we wanted "Happy Birthday" written on it too. I told her, no, just the legal stuff. She laughed. It was a cruel, cackling sound. "Do you think she will get it?" Bryn asked from the background without looking up. "Like, will she understand she's paying for the margaritas?" "It doesn't matter if she gets it," Dad said, popping a piece of cheese into his mouth. He looked smug. "She will pay for it. She always does. Stella is a payer. That is what she is for." Mom turned the camera back to herself. She winked. "She will just take it," Mom said. "She always does. She will make that little face she makes, where she looks like she is sucking on a lemon, and then she will pull out her checkbook. She is a good girl. Our little ATM." The video ended. I stared at the black screen. That is what she is for. Our little ATM. I didn't cry. The tears had dried up days ago. Instead, I felt a strange sense of clarity. For my entire life, I had wondered why I wasn't enough. I had wondered why I couldn't make them love me. I had worked harder, achieved more, saved more, trying to buy my way into their hearts. But I was never a person to them. I was livestock. I was a resource to be farmed. They didn't hate me. They just didn't see me as human. To them, I was just an asset class with a pulse. The cake wasn't a joke. It was a branding iron. They were marking their property. I closed the laptop. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. "Okay," I said to the empty room. "If I am just a business transaction to you, then let's do business." I picked up my phone and dialed Madeline. It was 9 o'clock at night. "Stella," she answered. "Everything okay?" "I have the video," I said. "And I have the motivation." "We are going to crush them, Stella," Madeline said. "No," I said. "Crushing them is too emotional. I want to liquidate them." I hung up. I went to the evidence folder and renamed the video file. Exhibit A, the confession of intent. The investigation was over. The war was about to begin. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what I was worth. Not what they said I was worth, but what the damages would be. The conference room at Madeline Shore's law firm was designed to intimidate. It was all glass, chrome, and polished mahogany, suspended 30 floors above the gray streets of Cleveland. On one side of the table sat the Perry family, my father, my mother, Cole, and Bryn. They were huddled together like refugees on a life raft, looking pale and sleepless. Beside them sat Arthur Miller, their lawyer, who looked less like a legal shark and more like a man who regretted taking the call. On the other side sat Madeline and me. We were not huddled. We were spaced out, comfortable, with our binders of evidence laid out in a neat, geometric grid. This was the mediation, the last-ditch effort to settle this family matter before it became a public spectacle in a courtroom. Arthur Miller cleared his throat. He shuffled his papers nervously. "Ms. Shore, Ms. Perry," he began, his voice thin. "We are here today because my clients, Diane and Curtis Perry, want to heal this breach. They recognize that mistakes were made. They recognize that boundaries were crossed." "Boundaries," Madeline interrupted. Her voice was sharp. "Mr. Miller, your clients committed felony identity theft. They didn't step on a flower bed. They robbed a bank using my client's face." "We dispute the characterization of robbery," Miller said quickly. "It was an unauthorized borrowing of credit. However, to put this behind us, and to avoid the unpleasantness of a trial, my clients are prepared to offer a settlement." He slid a piece of paper across the table. Madeline didn't pick it up. She looked at it without touching it. "They are offering to indemnify Stella from the loan which the bank has already done, by the way, and pay her a sum of $5,000 for her emotional distress," Miller said. "In exchange, we require a mutual non-disclosure agreement. Both parties agree to seal the record, withdraw all police reports, and never speak of this incident to third parties, including employers or extended family. I stared at the paper, $5,000, and silence. They wanted to buy my life back for the price of a used Honda Civic. An NDA, I asked. My voice was quiet in the acoustic stillness of the room. It is standard, Stella, Dad said. He spoke for the first time. He looked older than he had a week ago. His skin was gray, and his eyes were bloodshot. We just want this to go away. People are talking. The guys at the club, they are looking at me differently. Someone saw the police car at the house when I was served. It is humiliating. It is a nightmare, Mom added. She was wearing a black dress, as if she were in mourning. She dabbed at her dry eyes with a tissue. I can't even go to the salon. I feel like everyone knows. You have embarrassed us enough. Stella, we are willing to pay you to stop. Just take the money and let us have our lives back. I looked at them. They weren't sorry they had stolen from me. They were sorry they had been caught. They were sorry that their reputation, that fragile, hollow shell they spent every penny maintaining, was cracked. So let me get this straight, I said, leaning forward. You want to pay me $5,000 to sign a contract that says I can never tell anyone that you forged my signature. You want me to help you bury the body. We want peace, Bryn said. She looked terrible. Her roots were showing, and she wasn't wearing her engagement ring. I had to postpone the wedding. Stella, Todd is freaking out. Isn't that enough punishment? Do you have to ruin everything? I didn't ruin your wedding, Bryn, I said. You tried to pay for it with stolen goods. We are offering you an olive branch, Arthur Miller interjected, trying to regain control. $5,000 is a generous offer considering... Stop, I said. I opened my binder. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was the screenshot of the group chat. Operation Cabo. This is not a misunderstanding, I said to Miller. And this is not an impulsive mistake. This is a screenshot from a group chat dated 2 weeks prior to the party. In it, my father discusses the specific legal wording required on the cake to imply consent. My mother jokes about me being a payer. This was a premeditated conspiracy to entrap me. I slid the paper across the table. Miller looked at it. His face fell. He evidently hadn't seen this. He turned to my father. Curtis, you said it was a spur-of-the-moment decision. Dad didn't answer. He just stared at the table. And this, I continued, pulling out the second document, is a copy of the power of attorney form submitted to the bank. It bears the stamp of Elias Vance. I looked directly at my mother. Elias Vance is a retired notary with dementia living in Arizona, I said, which means you didn't just sign my name. You went to a black market document mill on East 9th Street and paid someone to fake a federal stamp. That is forgery in the first degree. That is not true, Mom stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. It is true, Madeline said. And here is the reality check. Mr. Miller, we are not just talking about a civil suit anymore. The bank's investigator, Mr. Thorne, has flagged this as organized fraud. He believes this is not the first time your clients have done this. He is looking into a pattern of behavior involving other family members, specifically, a cousin named Mike. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. My father's head snapped up. Mike, you talked to Mike. I talked to everyone, I lied. And so has the investigator. This is ridiculous, Dad shouted, slamming his hand on the mahogany. We are your parents. You are treating us like criminals. You are criminals, Curtis, Madeline said calmly. And right now, the only thing standing between you and a federal indictment is Stella's willingness to tell the prosecutor that she wants to show mercy. And you are offering her $5,000 and a gag order. What do you want? Cole asked. He was sitting at the far end of the table, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Just tell us what you want. Stella, how much? It is not about how much, I said. It is about the truth. We told you the truth, Mom cried. We were desperate. We needed to save the house. Lie, I said. I checked the records. The mortgage is current. You wanted the loan for the wedding and the car. You wanted to maintain an image. It was for Bryn, Cole blurted out. We all turned to him. Shut up, Cole, Dad hissed. No, I am done, Cole said, his voice cracking. He pointed a shaking finger at his sister. She is the one who wanted the destination wedding. She is the one who cried for 3 days until Dad said he would figure it out. I just wanted a car because mine died. But Bryn, she needed the resort. She needed the flowers. This is on her. Excuse me, Bryn shrieked. She stood up, her chair scraping violently against the floor. You are the one who found the guy on East 9th Street. You told Dad? I know a guy who can stamp anything for $50. That was you. Cole. Because Mom told me to handle it, Cole yelled back. Stop it, Dad roared. But the dam had broken. The pressure of the impending investigation had cracked the facade. They were eating each other alive. Mom told you? I asked, looking at Cole. Yes, Cole said, desperate to shift the blame. Mom said, we need that loan approved by Saturday for the party. She gave me the cash. She told me to go get the stamp. She planned the whole thing, the cake, the video, the notary. It was all her idea. You liar, Mom screamed. She lunged across the table at Cole, her face twisted into a mask of pure fury. I did everything for you kids. I sacrificed everything, and you blame me. You planned it, Bryn sobbed, collapsing back into her chair. You did. You said Stella wouldn't mind. You said she was a resource. A resource, I repeated. I looked at Arthur Miller. He had closed his folder. He was rubbing his temples. He knew the case was unwinnable. His clients had just confessed to conspiracy and forgery in front of opposing counsel. Okay, I said. The room went quiet. My mother was panting, her chest heaving. Cole was staring at the floor. Bryn was weeping into her hands. Here are my terms, I said. I didn't look at my notes. I knew exactly what I wanted. 1, I said. There will be no NDA. I will not sign away my right to speak about my own life. If people ask why I don't talk to you anymore, I will tell them the truth. We can't, Dad started, but Madeline silenced him with a look. 2, I continued. You will pay back the bank immediately. I don't care if you have to sell the boat, the cars, or the house. The debt gets cleared to 0, and you will pay my legal fees. Every cent. Madeline is expensive, and you are paying for her time. Fine, Dad whispered. We can do that. We will sell the boat. 3, I said. You will write a formal letter of apology, not to me, to the family, to Aunt Marianne, to Tessa, to Cousin Mike. You will admit that you lied. You will admit that you tried to steal from me, and you will send it. No, Mom said immediately. Her face hardened. Absolutely not. I will not humiliate myself in front of my sister. I will not do it. Then we go to trial, I said. You can't be serious, Mom spat. You would destroy our reputation over a letter. You are selfish. You have always been selfish. Stella, you think the world revolves around your precious feelings. Selfish? I asked. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my chest, a dark, cold thing. You tried to turn me into a co-signer for a party I was invited to as a prop, and I am selfish. We are not sending the letter, Dad said firmly. We will pay the money, but we are not destroying our name. We have to live in this town. Stella. Then you should have thought about that before you committed a felony, I said. And 4, I said, ignoring their refusal. This is the most important one. When we walk out of this room, you lose my number. You lose my address. You do not call me on Christmas. You do not call me on my birthday. If you see me in the grocery store, you turn your card around. I am no longer your daughter. I am no longer your sister. I am a stranger who knows your secrets. Stella, please, Bryn wept. You can't just cut us off. Who is going to be my maid of honor? I looked at her. The delusion was breathtaking. She still thought there was a wedding. She still thought there was a maid of honor. Hire someone, I said. You are good at spending money you don't have. You are a monster, Mom hissed. Her eyes were full of hate. It was a pure, clarifying hate. We gave you everything, and you sit there so high and mighty. You think you are better than us. You are nothing without us. I am nothing without you, I asked. I stood up. I smoothed the front of my blazer. I looked at the 4 people who had shaped me, who had taught me to be small, who had taught me to be quiet. You wrote this story, I said, my voice steady and final. You wrote the plot. You wrote the dialogue. You designed the cake. You hired the fake notary. You did all of this. I am just reading it out loud. We are not signing anything without an NDA, Dad said, crossing his arms. We will take our chances in court. No jury will convict parents for trying to help their family. It is not a jury you need to worry about. Curtis, Madeline said, closing her binder with a snap. It is the FBI? We are done here, I said. I turned and walked toward the door. Stella, Mom screamed. If you walk out that door, you are dead to me. Do you hear me? Dead. I stopped. My hand hovered over the door handle. I looked back. I have been dead to you for years, Diane, I said. I was just a ghost with a credit score. Now, I am just a ghost. I opened the door and walked out. I heard shouting behind me. I heard Arthur Miller trying to calm them down. I heard Bryn wailing. I walked down the hallway to the elevator. I pressed the button. My heart was pounding. But it wasn't racing with fear. It was racing with the adrenaline of liberation. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. As the doors closed, cutting off the sound of my family imploding, I saw my reflection in the polished steel. I looked tired, but I looked real. The negotiation was over. They had refused the lifeline. They had chosen their pride over their freedom. I took my phone out of my pocket. I had one more call to make. Mr. Thorne, I said when the investigator answered. Ms. Perry, he said, how did the mediation go? It failed, I said. They refused to admit fault without a non-disclosure agreement. And Mr. Thorne. Yes. My brother just confessed, in front of witnesses, that they paid a man on East 9th Street to forge the notary stamp. He said his mother gave him the cash. There was a pause on the line. Thank you. Ms. Perry, Thorne said. That changes everything. I will be contacting the district attorney within the hour. I hung up. The elevator hit the ground floor. The doors opened. I walked out into the lobby, out into the street, and into the rest of my life. The storm was coming for the Perrys. But for me, the sky was finally clearing. 3 weeks after the disaster at the mediation table, we gathered for the final act. This was not a negotiation. This was a surrender. The venue had changed. We were no longer in the plush, high-rise conference room of Madeline Shore's firm. We were in a sterile, beige deposition room at the Cuyahoga County Civil Courthouse. The air smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. The lighting was fluorescent and unforgiving, buzzing with a low hum that seemed to vibrate against my teeth. I arrived 15 minutes early. I wore a suit of armor disguised as a charcoal gray pantsuit. My hair was pulled back. My face was scrubbed clean of emotion. Beside me, Madeline sat with the predatory calmness of a lioness watching a limping gazelle. On the table in front of us sat 3 binders, black, thick, heavy. They contained the autopsy of my family. When the Perrys arrived, they looked like ghosts of the people I had known. My father, usually a man who filled a room with his booming voice and physical bulk, looked shrunken. His suit hung loosely on his shoulders. My mother wore large sunglasses, even indoors, presumably to hide eyes swollen from crying, or perhaps to avoid making eye contact with the daughter she had tried to sell. Cole and Bryn trailed behind them. They did not look at me. They looked at the floor, at the walls, at their phones. They looked like 2 people realizing that the party was over and the bill had arrived. Arthur Miller, their attorney, looked exhausted. He placed his briefcase on the table with a heavy thud. "Let us get this over with," Miller said. His voice was resigned. Before we could begin, my mother moved. She took off her sunglasses and leaned across the table. Her eyes were red-rimmed, desperate. "Stella," she whispered, "can we just have 5 minutes? Just you and me. Without the lawyers, please. Just mother to daughter." I looked at her. I remembered the text messages. I remembered the group chat. I remembered the notary on East 9th Street. "No," I said. "Stella, please," she begged, her voice cracking. "I just want to explain. I just want to hug you." "You can speak to my attorney," I said. I did not raise my voice. I did not blink. "I am not here to be hugged. Diane, I am here to close the file." She recoiled as if I had slapped her. She sank back into her chair, covering her mouth with a trembling hand. Madeline opened the first binder. The sound of the metal ring snapping open echoed in the small room like a gunshot. "We are here to finalize the settlement regarding the fraudulent loan application and the subsequent identity theft," Madeline announced. "We are also here to determine whether my client proceeds with the criminal complaint currently sitting on the desk of the district attorney." Arthur Miller raised a hand. "We understand the gravity of the situation. Ms. Shore, my clients are prepared to sign the admission of liability. We will get to the signature," Madeline said. "But first, we are going to put the facts on the record. For the sake of clarity," she pulled out a document stamped with the logo of First National Bank. "This is the final report from the bank's fraud investigation unit." Madeline read. "It confirms that on March 10th, an application for $25,000 was submitted from an IP address registered to Curtis Perry. It confirms that the electronic signature for Stella Perry was created on a device with a MAC address belonging to a laptop owned by Bryn Perry." Bryn gasped. She looked up, eyes wide with panic. "I just let Dad use my computer," Bryn stammered. "I didn't type it. I didn't click submit." "It doesn't matter whose fingers hit the keys, Bryn," I said, looking at my sister. "You provided the weapon," Madeline continued. "The report also confirms that the income verification documents were falsified, and my most damning of all, the power of attorney form bears the seal of Elias Vance, a notary who has not practiced in 2 years. My father flinched. He stared at the table, his jaw working silently. "We know you went to the check cashing place on East 9th, I said. "We have the security camera footage from the shop across the street. We see the minivan. We see Cole walking in." Cole's head snapped up. "You have video." "We have everything. Cole," I said. "This establishes the timeline of the fraud." Madeline stated, "But now, let us address the intent. Mr. Miller, your clients have claimed this was a misunderstanding, a surprise that went wrong." Madeline reached into the second binder. She pulled out the photo of the cake. The glossy 8x10 print landed in the center of the table. "Happy birthday, our favorite co-signer." "This is not a misunderstanding," Madeline said. "This is malice. This is a deliberate attempt to entrap my client into a video-recorded admission of debt." Then she pulled out the transcript of the group chat. "And this," Madeline said, sliding the paper toward my parents. "This is the conversation where you planned it. Specifically, the line where Curtis Perry says, 'She will pay for it. She always does.'" My father looked at the transcript. He looked at the cake. He looked at me. For the first time in my life, I saw him without the filter of fear. He wasn't a monster. He was just a small, greedy man who thought he was smarter than he was. He was a bully who had finally picked a fight with someone who could hit back. "It was a joke," Dad mumbled. "It was just family banter." "It is evidence, Curtis," I said. "It is evidence that you view me as a wallet, not a daughter." "And then there is the matter of the notary," Madeline said. "We have a sworn affidavit from the owner of the notary shop. He has agreed to testify that Cole Perry paid him $100 cash to backdate the stamp. He identified Cole from a photo lineup." Cole turned white. He looked at Dad. "You said he wouldn't talk. You said he was solid." "You idiot," Dad hissed at Cole. "Shut your mouth." "He rolled on you. Cole," I said. Criminals usually do when the FBI starts asking questions. The room descended into chaos. Mom was sobbing. Dad was yelling at Cole. Bryn was hyperventilating. Arthur Miller slammed his hand on the table. Enough silence. The family quieted down. But the damage was done. They had turned on each other. The united front was nothing but rubble. My clients accept the terms, Miller said, his voice tight. All of them. Just give us the papers. Madeline slid a thick stack of documents across the table. Here is the agreement, she said. Clause 1, complete admission of guilt regarding the fraudulent loan application. Clause 2, full repayment of the $25,000 to the bank immediately, clearing Stella Perry's name. Clause 3, reimbursement of $12,000 in legal fees to the firm of Shore Associates. $12,000. Dad choked. Freedom is expensive, I said. Sign it. Clause 4, Madeline continued. A permanent, irrevocable restraining order. No contact, no phone calls, no emails, no showing up at her work, no sending third parties to contact her. If you violate this, the suspended criminal charges will be reactivated immediately. My mother looked up. Her mascara was running down her face in dark streaks. Permanent, she whispered. Stella, you can't mean that. Christmas, your birthday, when you get married. If I get married, I said. You will read about it in the newspaper, maybe. But we are family, she wailed. We made a mistake, one mistake. It wasn't one mistake, I said. It was Cousin Mike. It was the student loans you made me take out. It was a lifetime of taking. And now, the bank is closed. I took a pen from my pocket. I signed my copy of the agreement. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was the only sound in the room. I slid the packet to my father. He looked at it. He looked at the bold letters, admission of fraud. He picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely hold it. He signed. Then Mom signed. She was weeping openly now, a low, keen sound of mourning for the control she had lost. Then Cole, then Bryn. When it was done, Madeline gathered the papers. She checked every signature. She nodded to me. It is finished, she said. I stood up. My legs felt strong. The crushing weight that had sat on my chest for 31 years, the weight of their expectations, their debts, their emotional blackmail was gone. I looked at them one last time. My father was staring at his hands. My mother was burying her face in a tissue. Cole and Bryn were looking away, unable to face the sister they had betrayed. You wrote a story where I was the victim, I said to them. You thought the ending was written in ink. You thought I would cry, and sign, and fade away. I picked up my purse. You forgot that I am the one holding the pen now, I said. Stella, Dad said. He didn't look up. We just wanted to keep the lifestyle. We didn't want to look like failures. You don't look like failures, Dad, I said. You look like felons. I turned to my mother. You don't get access to me anymore, I said. Not my money, not my time, not my love. You spent it all. I walked toward the door. Wait, Bryn called out. Stella, what am I supposed to do about the wedding? What do I tell people? I stopped. I didn't turn around. Tell them the truth, I said. Tell them you couldn't afford it. I opened the heavy door and stepped out into the hallway. Madeline followed me. We walked down the long marble corridor of the courthouse. Our heels clicked in unison, a rhythm of victory. You did good, Stella, Madeline said. They won't bother you again. The threat of prison is a powerful motivator. Thank you, Madeline, I said. Send me the final bill. I will, she said. Go celebrate. It is your birthday. Technically, a few weeks late. I walked out of the courthouse doors and into the sunlight. The city of Cleveland was moving around me. Cars were honking. People were rushing to lunch. The world was indifferent to the tragedy that had just played out in that small room, and that indifference was beautiful. I took my phone out of my pocket. I opened my contacts list. I scrolled to Dad. Block contact. I scrolled to Mom. Block contact. I scrolled to Cole. Block contact. I scrolled to Bryn, block contact. Then, I went to the group chat, Operation Cabo. I left the group. Then I deleted the thread. I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like autonomy. I walked to my car. I didn't have a destination in mind. I could go anywhere. I could do anything. My credit was frozen, but my life was unthawed. I thought about the cake one last time. That white sheet cake with the yellow border and the cruel, edible confession. They had meant it to be a shackle. They had meant it to be the moment I accepted my role as their eternal servant. I smiled. A real smile. The cake was supposed to silence me. Instead, it gave me my voice back. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop your location in the comments below, and let me know if you have ever had to cut ties with toxic family members to save yourself. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Stay strong and protect your peace.